Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our penultimate Business and Economy meeting of 2020. We've got another one in December, and I'll give you some more notification of that at the end of the meeting. But you're all very welcome. I hope you find this morning interesting and constructive. We've got a packed agenda and plenty of speakers. So please, as Libby says, do use the chat facility if you've got any questions as we go through. And there will be some time at the end for some questions as well if required. So as we have a packed schedule, we'll crack on. First on the agenda should be Debbie Skellen from the LEP. Do we have Debbie with us?
Hi Dave, this is Chris from the LEP here. Unfortunately, Debbie and Paddy aren't able to join us this morning, but I'm here to provide the group with an update on the Growth Hub from the Swindon
Great, Chris.
point of view.
All right, thanks very much. Crack on then, Chris. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, thanks, Libby, as well. And good morning, everyone. And Chris Stevens here. For anyone who haven't had the pleasure of meeting so far, Growth Hub Manager, Swindon and Wiltshire Local Enterprise Partnership. Just prepared an update for everyone today, just to give you an indication as to where we are on the service and the levels of business support that we're delivering at the moment. So we've seen a huge lift in demand, as you might expect, under the current circumstances on the Growth Hub service. So just to give an indication of that, across September and October alone, we fielded around 760 incoming calls. And that's obviously not including any digital or web chat communications with business as well. And last week alone, we had 178 inbound calls. Also, as you might expect, typically much of the trend of the support that we're offering at the moment is around finance and access to finance. With the impending arrival now of our local restrictions support grants and additional support grants, we're positioned to provide support to businesses in signposting organisations towards those with local authority links and so forth, being that they are the partners that are delivering those grants. So much of the work that we're doing at the minute is around that visibility, around ensuring that businesses know where they can go and how they go about getting in contact with local authorities and accessing those grants. And also some of that core volume is around our own ERDF recovery grant programme, which is supporting both the visitor and wider economy, but more about that in just a moment's time. So just broken down by programme, once again, I'll try and keep this relatively succinct. It's got lots happening at the moment, but our main flagship programme of SME competitiveness, which has the three elements of support of pre-start and start-up, growth and scale-up, and of course the element for Honda staff being made redundant from the Honda workforce that have aspirations around starting a business. We've made 80 referrals from just the Growth Hub business navigators alone into that, so it's proving that there is demand still around the pre-start and the startup, and indeed growth for certain businesses that is not necessarily associated to the various different grants. So there are demands still on and requirements to provide that much needed startup and indeed growth type support. Our This Way Up programme, which is a combination of one-to-one and direct delivery and webinars. So our webinars have been delivered under three main headlines of leadership, digital and finance. And we've had around 270 attendees so far and delivered 40 individual one-to-one digital advice appointments. So it's fair to say that going back to that trend of access to finance, digital capability, those two together are really the two of the most substantial trends in types of support that businesses are looking for at the moment. Onto our ERDF recovery grants. So we had a total of over 500 applications in all, and we've whittled that down to about 150 businesses that solidly meet our eligibility criteria that we've set throughout the application window and during the process. We have a funding of around £380,000 to distribute, and on average of around 3,000 per grant. That would be around 127 grants that we're looking to distribute. We're starting communications with our successful applicants within those 150 this week. So some businesses will start to hear, and those that have been ineligible or haven't reached a certain criteria, we've been handling those communications at the front end in the most part. So many of those have already been communicated to. Also our peer network, so the new program that was another BASE funded program where we're launching 10 sector specific cohorts on action learning that will each have a mentor facilitator looking after each of those groups. All of our mentors and facilitators are in place, poised and ready to go. We think our first cohort that will get away is manufacturing. We have nearly 10 businesses recruited to come onto that particular sector cohort. So later again this month or early December, we'll be away with our cohort provision there as well. And just under the core banner, so our base core funding for general operations as far as the Growth Hub is concerned, our website has had some treatment, particularly on the business support pages. We found, and in response to some feedback, some businesses partners were finding it quite difficult to locate specific types of support that were around individual business positions, namely if they were a startup looking for growth, looking for skills, and it was structured more around program title. So I'd invite you to have a look at the Growth Hub business support pages where you'll find the navigation based around the position of the business. They'll click the tile on wherever they sit and they'll be able to see what programs of support may be appealing to them. So lots of work gone into that. Website traffic is up by 200% at the moment, typically, and we continue to publish articles and newsletters out to the business community around the various different topics and things, but of course, mostly focusing on those grants coming down the line. Kickstart, so the DWP Kickstart scheme, SWLEP is now a intermediary or official representative of the Kickstart scheme. So if you come across businesses that are not that aren't recruiting more than 30 places and want some support with that, we can include them in our applications. We've submitted 2 applications totaling 70 placements so far, so that's proven to be quite successful. We're just waiting on the on news from DWP having submitted some further information on whether they are indeed successful. So that's going to be a really positive thing to bring some young people into business and helping them secure employment through that method. But the final note from me is just to say that if you do indeed engage with businesses that are looking for support, whilst we've got a plethora of different programs and support available, the 3 main entry points into the service for any business would be telephone, email, or web chat. They can go to the Growth Hub website, find that information, whatever their best contact approach is, and at the other end, they will be picked up by a dedicated business navigator who will have that consultative conversation and ascertain perhaps which program or area of support is best suited for them, which includes skills as well that I didn't touch on earlier. But that's everything from me, Dave. I don't want to take too much of the time, and so I'll pass back to you. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
That's great, Chris. Thanks very much. Yeah, I think there's a lot of intermediaries out there for people that are interested in Kickstart scheme. Ourselves, Business West, are also intermediaries, and the numbers stack up. Likewise, Chris, we've also delivered our first tranche of 70 Kickstart people as well. So yeah, it's good to get some youngsters involved in work experience. Okay, if I could hand over, please, to Rachel Finlay from Wiltshire Council, that'd be great.
Hello, thank you for that introduction, Dave. I'm Rachel Finlay. I'm the Economy and Enterprise Manager at Wiltshire Council, working within Sam Fox's team. I've put together some slides, quite possibly too many, so I won't linger over them, and I'm sure if at some point they can be circulated and anybody wants them, then we can do that. I thought that this morning it might be useful to start by sharing some information on the wider economic context that we find ourselves in right now. So if, Natasha, you wouldn't mind going through the next 2 slides. So I'm using figures that we have gathered for our ongoing economic dashboard, as it's called. And I thought it might be useful just specifically to look at some figures around employment. So this first slide just indicates furlough rates. And you can see, I hope, that from a peak in June, furlough rates have decreased both across the southwest, but also within Wiltshire. And our current figure is somewhere around 10%. Next slide. We can break that down further by constituency. And again, you can see that the rates of claim are fairly consistent. Devizes is doing better than Chippenham, marginally higher rates in the south of the county, but consistency. Next slide. Perhaps more interestingly, more significantly, the retention data, which is shown here. This is furloughed staff tracked in respect of whether they have remained on the payroll for their original company. So this is all about retention. And again, the figures that you're looking at are for the Southwest. So on average, we're seeing that 90% of furlough workers in our region have remained on the PAYE system, which is obviously encouraging. And the sector analysis there shows some variation. But if we look at a sector, for example, the accommodation and food services, so a highly impacted sector, 85% of workers remain on payroll, even though they have been furloughed. And to put a human face on that, in 2018, we had 18,000 residents in Wiltshire who were employed in the accommodation and food services sector. So a 15% reduction in payroll would suggest that around 2,700 residents were removed. Next slide. Self-employed, sole trader businesses, obviously very key to our local economy. And I'm sure a number of the people in this meeting this morning are self-employed or sole trading. The data identifies that we've got around 25,300 businesses, self-employed businesses who would be eligible for the SEIS support, the SEISS support. And what we're seeing is that Wiltshire's claim rate has been lower than the national and the regional average. However, we're aware that the value of the claims has been higher. So the take-up is still short of what it might be. Next slide, please. Apprenticeships, I thought, might be another interesting stat to look at. Apprenticeship Starts for new apprenticeships obviously hit a wall, completely stalled in April when COVID hit, but we have seen some quite encouraging improvements since. And in September of this year, we saw that new starts were actually higher than in September of last year. So again, some encouraging figures there. Next slide, please. The last bit of stat that I thought might be of interest was reflecting another indicator around planning and the property market. So planning applications have been significantly down this year, but again, September indicated the first signs of growth for planning apps. By comparison, the property market activity has seen significant increase, again, in line with much of the regional trend. So again, some positive indicators economically in that respect. All of that data is relevant and current up to the end of October, so it's pretty recent. And again, most is available in the public domain. So moving on, if I can have the next slide, I thought it might be useful to discuss what the key focus has been for the local authority over the last 6-7 months. The key focus for us in respect of business support has been around the delivery of the business support grant programmes. As you'll know, there have been two principal schemes. One aimed at businesses that have rateable premises or are eligible for rate relief, and then a discretionary scheme which aimed to support businesses outside of that main scheme. And in summary, I just wanted to report that some 7,635 businesses received grants of between £10,000 and £25,000 through the small business and RHL schemes. And you can see the breakdown there in terms of what that looked like from a financial perspective. And a further 668 businesses were in receipt of a discretionary grant, and those were awards of between £5,000 and £7,000 per business. Moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to give you an idea of what the kind of mechanism behind these figures involved. We had 129 staff whose principal activity was around delivering grants. Some of those staff were working 7 days a week at the peak of the process. We were operating a call centre which had contact from over 3,000 individual businesses. And there was a major communications exercise, as you might imagine, around publicising the grant and also dealing with inquiries around it. And we were very much supported by the Growth Hub in respect of being able to signpost additional business support inquiries to them, and we had a very much two-way flow of support and information. So the Growth Hub is really key in respect of disseminating information to businesses about the support that's available to them. A side benefit was that the county's rate records are significantly improved and updated from pre-COVID information. That's quite important because of the current scheme. So if I move on to the next slide, the next iteration of business support grant comes with a catchy title of Local Restriction Support Grant, or LRSG for short. Again, this is a rates-based scheme programme. It has various iterations which are bulleted there on the left hand of that slide. But I think the important things to note for business are that in Wiltshire, that scheme is now open for online applications. It's rate related, so the LRSG is targeted at businesses that have significant fixed overheads, largely evidenced through having a rateable valued premises. And it's aimed at closed businesses. So it's for businesses that have been required to close under the latest national restrictions. Payments are one-off payments every 4 weeks, and there is traction for the scheme to continue beyond this initial period of national restriction, regardless of what tier we come out into at the end of this 4-week initial period. Obviously, the LRSG scheme only covers a certain proportion of businesses, so there will be a discretionary scheme following, and the target at the moment for Wiltshire Council is to have that scheme live from the 23rd of November. And again, there are criteria around which businesses will be eligible to apply, and again, it's largely aimed at businesses that are not closed but are significantly affected and can evidence that, and businesses that are in supply chains to businesses that have been forced to close. Moving on to the next slide, this slide and the next one are just key contact information. So there is information around the eligibility criteria and the nature of the funding that's available on the Wiltshire Council website, and the address is shown on the top of this slide. The application process is an online application process, and again, the second link there is to the application form itself. So if you believe that you're eligible, you can check using the top link. If you would like to make an application, please do so as soon as possible, and that bottom link will take you directly to the form. So both on the Wiltshire Council webpage. On the next slide, information about all of the support available can probably most easily be accessed by businesses from Wiltshire Council through sign up to our regular business newsletter. and that's a link to do that. We also have a fully supported COVID-19 business support inbox for anyone that has queries or questions about the process or about support that's available, whether it's grant related or not. If it's for business support that falls outside of the local authority administered schemes, then we are signposting to the support of the business navigators sitting under the remit of the Growth Hub. And again, that's the third and final set of contact details on that particular slide. So moving on again, and in conclusion, I thought it might be useful just to cover off what the Council's focus is currently on in respect of our current situation. So Wiltshire Council reverted from recovery mode to response mode on the 2nd of November. That's obviously in response to the new restrictions. What that means in principle is that the day-to-day management of the response is coordinated by a superstructure headed up by Gold. Gold is effectively 10 cells. So 10 groups of individuals who act in key areas such as public health, the communications piece. And there is an economy cell that sits within the heart of Gold. Next slide, please. The focus of the economy cell, which is led by Sam Fox, our director, is dissemination of the grants for which the local authority are responsible, and business support, so support for business generically, support for high street, support for people in business. Recovery at the moment is latent, it hasn't gone away, but it's not a prime focus of activity whilst we're in recovery mode. Business support, I've covered business grants, so I won't go over that, but business support wise, we have some 45 staff whose prime focus right now is working on grants. The first grant payments will go out this Friday. And in respect of more generic business support, there are a range of activities that are now in hand. Reopening of shops, the high street premises, is driven by collation of reopening safely packs and collateral that go with that. Those are upcoming for the beginning of December. There's a focus on keeping the enterprise networks, enterprise centres open and available for businesses that cannot work from a home-based environment. We continue to provide advice and guidance and signposting for businesses of all types that are looking for support. And again, we work hand in glove with the Growth Hub to do that. And just moving on to, I think, the final slide. A key focus right now is supporting the retail sector. So very much on board with the shop local, shop safe, support Wiltshire business message. And rather than looking to create something unique ourselves as the local authority, we are intending to and are working in collaboration with a number of our partners to pick up on existing initiatives in this area. And we're aiming to add volume to those efforts and to work collaboratively so that we can help businesses over the critical weeks in the run-up to Christmas, but also in the dark months that follow thereafter. So I hope that provides a quick blast summary of activity, both previous and going forward, within the context of where we find ourselves from an economic perspective at the moment. Thank you.
That's great, Rachel. Thanks very much for that update. It's much appreciated. Now, one of our speakers isn't yet with us. So if David Andrews from Visit Wiltshire is ready, if you're happy to move next, David, that will be much appreciated.
Okay, Dave, yeah, very happy to give it a go. What I thought I'd do just for 10 minutes is to just run through a whole load of different maybe observations and issues to do with tourism. So a bit of a blast of lots of different bits, but maybe just to start on the obvious thing, which is, of course, tourism has been completely devastated by COVID and continues to be. And I won't go too much into detail, but the government reckon there'll be a loss of £75 billion to the UK economy. We're looking at about 10 to 15,000 job losses in Swindon and Wiltshire. At the moment, many businesses haven't been able to open. Of course, and the outlook of when they might be able to open is cloudy. Lots of businesses opening at very reduced capacities, etc. In terms of confidence, consumer confidence, there's a number of sentiment surveys, and most of those are showing declining consumer confidence in terms of taking holidays, taking short breaks. And internationally, of course, Brexit has an impact on confidence. So confidence from countries like Germany and France is also declining and has been declining for a bit. Americans, actually, interestingly, are really gung-ho about visiting when they're able to. They're not able to at the moment, of course, but there is a lot of pent-up demand from some countries, America particularly. There seems to be a real, we're getting a lot of interest from Americans wanting to come back to the UK and come back to Swindon and Wiltshire when they can. So that's good news. Very short. Generally, people are booking really, really late. So, I mean, very typically, we've had tourism businesses accommodation when they were able to open might have been at 50% capacity on the Wednesday, and then by the Friday they were at 90% capacity for that weekend. People booking really, really late, and that's part to do with the restrictions. Of course, places can't open at the moment, but and then in terms of just trends, obviously there's some key trends around independent travellers rather than groups being the main focus at the moment. And I'm talking about obviously when people are able to travel again. Millennials looking to be a key target for travelling. We tend to get more of the older age group, 40, 45 plus, 60 plus travellers. Many of those are much more nervous about travelling and so need more reassurance in the future. Responsible tourism, sustainable tourism, absolutely massively increased in terms of what people are interested to do in the future. And of course, in terms of what people are looking, the sorts of experiences, holidays, trips people are looking to do in the future, rural is top of the list. So some of the big cities are very worried about how they're going to win back tourism businesses, even when accommodation was able to open. Some of the big cities near us really struggled in terms of their leisure accommodation. So people wanting to get out into the countryside to escape, relaxation. So when places were able to open, self-catering, doing many of our self-catering properties at holiday cottages have reported record business this year, despite having been closed for 3 or 4 months. Luxury hotels doing pretty well as well. But of course, many types of tourism businesses, as I've already said, have done really poorly this year, with many at risk of closure and some already closing. Worth just touching on capacity issues. Massive issues around what's the future of aviation capacity going to be, and there's a future of aviation inquiry going on at the moment in government. I think the submission deadline is this Monday, but that's looking at the impact of aviation, what's the impact of coronavirus on the aviation, travel and tourism industry including specifically at a local and regional level. But as we see, I saw Qantas this week who said they're not going to fly to the UK for the whole of 2021, for instance. So there's significant capacity issues. Many coach companies are really struggling because of capacity issues, and of course rail capacity issues as well. So there is some significant issues around capacity. So when people are able to travel, and then most of our attractions in Wiltshire, when they were able to open, were opening at 30 or 40% capacity. So obviously for lots of businesses, they weren't able to open profitably. So that has an impact in terms of the future as well. A couple of more positive things, I think. There's been a couple of initiatives led by the National Tourist Board, Visit Britain and Visit England. They've got one of their biggest ever domestic marketing campaigns called Escape the Everyday has been running. Of course, it's on pause now, but scheduled to rerun from December. And that's looking at a whole load of issues around how do we encourage people to plan trips for the future, and looking at getting off the beaten track, rural, escape, countryside, walking, etc. And then there's an initiative for any of you talking to tourism businesses. If you're not aware of the National Good to Go initiative, if you're talking to businesses, you need to encourage them to sign up to the Good to Go initiative, which is an accreditation whereby they can reassure customers that they are COVID secure and that they're compliant with in terms of being in line with government regulations, etc. Our messaging, we put a lot of effort, those of you who follow us on social and are in touch with our website, we put a lot of issues. The messaging changes all the time for us, doesn't it, I guess. So throughout the whole process, messaging changes, and we put a lot of effort into changing content. So at the moment, we're doing virtual trips to Wiltshire, plan your future trips to Wiltshire, festive fun, those sorts of themes as well. And our social engagement is up massively. It's up about 250%. So we are getting a lot of interest, and a bit reflective again of this pent-up demand that people are going to want to travel at some point in the future. We're always looking for content. So again, if you're talking to businesses, if you can help with content, guest blogs, please do let us know. And we also run a series of webinars and sessions. So if you're talking to tourism businesses, please do put them in contact with us as well, because we're here to support them, and business support. Unfortunately, we don't have the same volume of staff of some others, but we are here to help with business support for the tourism sector as well. I guess in terms of well, two other things to mention. Our Visit Wiltshire as a company, at the start of the lockdown, we had about 550 participating, investing industry businesses. Quite a lot of businesses haven't been able to reinvest this year because they haven't been able to open. So we're looking at about a 60% drop in terms of our income for us as an agency. Of course, we're moving all our activity digitally online. So there's not much point producing print at the moment because it's out of date so quickly, and you've got to be able to change it. So a lot of our marketing collateral for 2021, which we're now working on, will be, well, all of it really will be digital. And then the other thing, well, maybe two things to mention. One is that the need for a long-term national tourism recovery plan has been a big issue and a big focus for us for a while. We're on the board of the Tourism Alliance, which is the national lobbying group, and we're regularly in touch with DCMS. And that DCMS are looking now at putting together a national tourism recovery plan, looking at a whole load of issues around fiscal and non-fiscal support packages, how to exploit demand, what to do about helping capacity, even issues like how is tourism structured in this country, which needs reviewing as well. Which countries should we open up with first in terms of quarantine? What measures can be put in place to allow visitors to still come to this country when there is quarantine in place, etc. And then the other thing is the Great West Way, which we also run the Great West Way initiative, which is creating and developing a touring route between London and Bristol. That continues to go really well, and we've just had a £200,000 grant programme for marketing activity over the next, between now and the end of March. We're obviously not spending money on consumer marketing right now because everything's shut, but there's travel trade, for instance, is a big element, and certainly in terms of international visitors, international travel trade, most international visitors book through the travel trade, and most travel trade are now working on 2021 and 2022 programs. So if we're not working with them now, then you missed the boat for 21 and 22 as well. So, but the Great West Way is going really, really well still, and we're getting a lot of support for it. So that's at least a positive note to end on, especially given all the pent-up demand that that we need to be ready for when the restrictions lift. That's it from me.
That's great. Thanks very much, David. That's really good. So it sounds like you're very, very well prepared for when they open the floodgates and start welcoming visitors again. And obviously also good news that in a recent industry award, Wiltshire was named #1 tourist destination in the UK.
I know, isn't that fantastic? So we've got plenty of good things to celebrate, and I think it's interesting at the moment because we're getting a lot of engagement from locals and from residents as well. And I think Rachel mentioned shop local, and some of that pushing out to messaging to locals about what to do, where to go walking, shopping locally, etc., is really important at the moment. So I think it's definitely an opportunity to encourage local residents to explore the best tourist destination in the country as well.
Brilliant. No, thanks very much for the update, David. Thanks a lot. Much appreciated. Okay, if it's okay now for us to move across to my colleague Dee Temple-Moulton for an update from an innovation perspective. If that's okay, Dee, over to you.
Thank you, Dave, and good morning, everybody. I just wanted to give you some idea of the type of things that we are actually doing at Business West as a whole. Next slide, please, Libby. So Business West are a not-for-profit company, and our main office is actually down at Lee Court in Bristol. We also have a very nice office at Park House in Swindon. And some of you may recognise Lee Court from Poldark, where we actually have the filmmaking done. Also, there's a new costume drama which has just been finished filming, and that's coming out Christmas. But apart from that, what we do is we have three main areas of the company. So we deal with public sector contracts. So that's innovation, which I work on, Department of International Trade, Skills and Enterprise. We also have the commercial arm, which, as I say, is events. It's not only the filming, but we also hold weddings, etc., down there. And of course, the membership, which the majority of people on the call this morning are members of the initiative or the Chamber of Commerce. We are a not-for-profit organisation, around about 250 staff, and all our profits are actually not distributed to shareholders, but are reinvested back into the company. Next slide, please, Libby. So the overview is that under the innovation side, we manage four main projects under public sector contracts. So we have the EEN, and primarily the funding for these contracts actually come from Innovate UK, which again is based in Swindon. Once we've left the EU, the funding will actually be wholly by IUK, and at the same time, the EEN, or the Enterprise Europe Network, will disappear and be replaced by the Global Innovation Growth Network. Interesting enough, when they were trying to think of an acronym, they actually came up with Global Innovation Growth, which for any of you, Global Innovation Network, which of course spells gin, and they decided that probably wasn't a suitable acronym for them. Next slide, please, Libby. The Enterprise Europe Network is our gateway to international business opportunities. Over 60 countries are involved in this network and offer companies the chance to collaborate and link with other partners across the world. You don't have to be engaged in any of our projects, so Innovate UK projects, to actually be involved in this. If you are a company that is looking for business partners or collaboration with other companies across the network, then we can develop a profile with you which goes up on the network and can gain expressions of interest. So, for example, I've been working with a care company, and they have identified that there is collaboration with a partner in another country. So we have developed a company profile for them, and there is already an expression of interest that they excuse me, they are going to get involved in some research and development work. And we work across all sectors to manage those relationships. So if at any time you think, well, it would be useful, I'm looking to collaborate, I'm looking to find another partner, then we are more than happy to work with you on that. Next slide, please, Libby. So one of the main programs that we work with is Innovate2Succeed. And Innovate2Succeed started in 2016 to support those innovative companies across the Southwest. And again, what we are doing is working with them, whether they be developing a new product, a process, or a service. There's something that is very, very unique to the innovation landscape. And we support them with funding, looking for funding, grants, loans, investment, looking at tenders. We look at their marketing, their planning, their processes, and very important, their intellectual property and the awareness of potential infringement and freedom to operate and manage risks. This is open to SMEs. We work with companies that have less than a £50 million turnover. So you can see that that is quite a broad spectrum of companies that we can work with across the Southwest. What we have now gone on to do is focus with companies on the COVID challenge, and that has been happening since April. Next slide, Libby, please, and the next one. So people will ask, where does Innovate UK fit? Where do we fit in this picture, in this landscape? And most people have heard of BEIS, which is the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And we sit within the Enterprise Europe network, which you can see down on the right-hand side there. And what we do is we are able to have connections with all of those other people around. So the Innovate UK KTNs, the Knowledge Transfer Network, the Catapults, so linking with universities, etc. Next slide, please, Libby. And our service is developed with business growth in mind. So, you know, looking at this slide, what we do is we respond to the requirement to harness latent potential to scale, and particularly around the needs of innovative companies. As businesses grow, they need to have different input. You know, no one size fits all. We're really aware of that. And where we get very much involved is that early stage growth and scale element. So supporting those companies that have got that superb idea and helping them to grow and get to market. It's also very specific where we can work with companies around a COVID-19. So there has been a lot of grants available to address the COVID-19 requirements and the support. So companies, for instance, that I'm dealing with have, one in particular has developed a fogging machine for the COVID response for ambulances. And they have actually been able to access grants through Innovate UK. Next slide, please, Libby. And the next. I feel a bit like countdown. So back in April, the government announced a financial package to ensure that those companies impacted by the pandemic were offered and received the right type of support. Next slide, Libby. The £750 million Innovate UK package was delivered to companies that we had previously worked with to ensure they knew support was available. So they were able to access some grants. They were able to access continuity grants if they already were in the process of R&D and had a project, an innovation project in research and development mode. And we continue to work with these companies and will continue to do so up until March 2022. And that is at the current time. And at that point, it will actually be reviewed. Next slide, Libby, please. So in terms of the COVID response offer, if everybody can see that, inquiries around the COVID support is very much focused on finance. And we've set up a fully supported finance hub to assist companies. The main queries when we were in the thick of the COVID were around grants, C-bills, continuity loans, and generic finance advice. People not knowing exactly where to go to. However, in many of the cases, particularly within the manufacturing sector, it has been about the development of new working processes. And I know Peter Allen of Catalant had spoken to us, I think, last month on the economy meeting, talking about how his company has dealt with the new working processes. Some companies have engaged us to, excuse me, to develop new routes to market, looking at how to gain new clients, and several of them have actually looked at how we can support them in pivoting their business at this time. Next slide, please. So in terms of advisory support, what we offer is up to 5 days of advisor time. So I'm actually an innovative advisor. And we work as part of the innovation and growth team. So we operate as part of the UK's overall COVID response to support businesses, providing mentoring, advice and support, and overcoming the challenges presented by COVID using our expert advisory team. So we have around about 30 specialist advisors working with us who are specialists in their sectors. And all of this is free to companies. So we're focused on supporting the UK's most innovative and progressive businesses to ensure their survival. And it has been about survival, stabilizing the business, agreeing actions, and just giving them that critical friend that they can come to and ask questions of. These are the businesses of tomorrow. They're already engaged and heavily invested in by the UK, and will actually form the platform for our speedy economic recovery. So thank you for listening. Next slide, please, Libby. Those are my contact details. It's a fairly quick whip through of how we deliver our services around the innovation and COVID. And if there's anything that I can help you with, if there's any questions, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you. Over to you, Dave.
That's great. Thanks very much, Dee. Just refer to my colleagues in events. I don't believe that Geraint Coles from the Royal Agricultural University has joined us as yet. Is that right, Libby?
Yes, that is correct. He's not here yet.
Okay. Well, in that case, we'll move on to my update as to what we've been doing from the initiative in Swindon. My colleague Ian Larrard is on the town's fund board and has worked on the town investment plan with both Swindon MPs, the council leader, councillors and leaders from the National Trust, Nationwide, Network Rail and others to bid for up to £25 million from a fund, a pot of money that was available pre-COVID to develop the town centre. Our bid was subsequently submitted at the end of July, and hopefully we'll have a response on that in the next few weeks. Ian also sits on the Honda National Task Force, working with BAYS and SWLEP, the council, and obviously Honda themselves, working to help all of those that are going to be affected by the closure at the end of July next year. Also, obviously trying to help with what happens with the 375-acre site in conjunction with Honda. Obviously, it's one of the largest employment land sites between London and South Wales. It's quite significant. It includes a runway and a railhead, so hopefully there'll be some positive news coming out of that in a year or so's time. Leading up to and over the summer, Ian was also heavily engaged and involved with the merger of the two colleges in Swindon, despite the kind of challenges you'd expect from that, not least of which COVID was involved. This merger was achieved mid-August, and it also obviously helps facilitate the creation of the new Institute of Technology, which is due to open next September. It was very much a business/education partnership, and providing demand-led courses for our learners. And we continue to work very closely with the new college, and I think Caroline is with us this morning as well. So hi, Caroline from New College Swindon. Also, Ian has been working closely with In Swindon Bid. He's actually the chair of In Swindon Bid throughout the lockdown, and has been helping with the recovery in the town centre, which has affected about 500 businesses. There's been considerable marketing and business support for those companies, including a virtual Christmas light switch on and numerous other campaigns which have helped these businesses throughout the difficult times over the last several months. But really good news, 18 new independent shops have opened in Swindon Town Centre, so that's really reassuring. We've been continuing to hold these regular business and economy meetings with an interesting and diverse range of speakers. And for those of you who weren't with us last time, we had the Director of Public Health who updated us on the local handling of COVID. We've also had consistent and solid turnout at these events and our MPs meetings, one of which we've got towards the end of the year, and I'll give you the dates and times for those at the end of this. Our inaugural manufacturers cluster meeting was a great success. We pulled together some of Swindon's biggest employers from an industrial stroke manufacturing perspective to talk about challenges and issues that they're faced with. It was a really good opportunity to share experiences, share knowledge and best practice. And our next Brexit themed event will be at the end of November. So it's a really good opportunity for those in that industry, in that sector, to get together. We also had a really interesting meeting in conjunction with the Bank of England and their regional agent. We had a fantastic meeting with, again, some of Swindon's larger employers, with one of the independent members of the Monetary Policy Committee, Jan Vlieger. They were really impressed with our input, fascinated by the stories that our businesses had to tell, and there's potential for this to become a regular meeting because they found our input so useful. So that's really good news. I've been working on the Switch On to Swindon editorial committee to help share positive business stories about Swindon. I've also been involved in organising the 5 annual events that we hold in conjunction with Mind. It's called the Swindon Mindful Employer Network. And if you're a Swindon-based business and want to come along to our events to find out about how you can better support your employees from a mental health perspective, then please leave your details or just say interested in the Mindful Employer Network in the chat box or the chat facility, and we'll make sure that you get on the distribution list for being updated about when those events are held. As I say, there are 5 a year in conjunction with the mental health charity Mind. They're really interesting events actually, and we always have some really interesting speakers there as well. I've also been in discussion having meetings with WASCU, the Wilts and Swindon Credit Union, to discuss how they can deliver their message about personal finance to the wider business community. There's a very strong possibility we'll get them to do a presentation at one of our forthcoming business and economy meetings, because they give really great advice on what good financial health looks like, and the impact of not having good financial health. I've also been involved in meetings with the Swindon Social Enterprise Network, which helps other social enterprises locally to better support their communities. From a membership perspective, we're delighted to welcome some new members, including GWR, dialogue language services. They provide a translation service. So if any of our other members here today are interested in having somebody do some translation for them, especially with Brexit on its way, we've got a local business that can provide that function for you. Also, BioViron International. I think Bruce from BioViron is with us this morning. They've developed some sensational biodegradable packaging, which seems incredible. Also, City Fibre, who, as you may know, are probably in the midst or just about to start digging up different bits of the road to install full fibre cable into Swindon. And we also welcome Swindon Carer Centre, who are an amazing organisation looking after around 20,000 carers in the area. A few major investment announcements locally. It's just a snapshot. You may be aware that there's been the biggest storage and distribution deal in British history. It's just taken place in Swindon. There's going to be a 2.3 million square foot warehouse that's being commissioned. It's been bought by Legal & General for 200 million, and it's on a 20-year lease, I believe, to Amazon. And they're paying £10 million a year to lease this building. But the good news story is that will employ around 2,000 staff when that comes into production and it is open. I think probably about this time next year, actually. So there's some good news on the jobs front there. Work has also commenced on the new Zurich headquarters. It's a 100,000 square foot building for one of Swindon's largest employers, and that will be completed in 2022. And hopefully that will be a catalyst for similar offices in the Kimmerfields area. The plans for a new cultural quarter in Swindon over the next 10 years have just been approved by the council. They include a 1,200-seat theatre venue and a new museum, art gallery, dance centre, and a digital studio. Costing around 80 million, it will be a major investment in the town centre. Also, major infrastructure-wise, plans have finally been approved for the construction of the Stonehenge bypass. This will improve the A3 past Stonehenge between Amesbury and Berwick by creating a new dual carriageway with a tunnel, removing traffic from much of the iconic setting. It's a 6-year project. I believe actually we have Highways England doing a presentation at our next Business and Economy meeting. We heard from Rachel about the different funding streams that are available for some businesses. It's worth pointing out that the additional restrictions grant is available immediately from Swindon Borough Council. So that's as of this morning. If you're self-employed with less than 50 employees, there are some other criteria as well, but that portal on Swindon Borough Council's website should be open today. So go to Swindon Council's website and look at COVID support, and you can find everything about that grant there. There won't be a second rollout of these funds, so it will be a bit of a rush. So if you qualify, get in soon, because this money won't last too long. So that concludes my update, other than to say that it's important to let you know about the date of the next meetings. The next Business and Economy meeting will be on the 9th of December. That'll be, again, 9:30 to 11. We also have our manufacturing cluster group. That's going to be on the 26th of November. And then we have an MPs and leader of the council meeting, which will be on the 4th of December. At 9:30 to 11 o'clock. So keep an eye out in your email inboxes for information and dates about those, and check out our newsletter. Make sure that you know when these events are taking place. Just a quick update back to Libby again. Do we have Geraint Coles from the Royal Agricultural University with us yet, Libby?
No, we don't, I'm afraid, Dave.
Okay, right. Let's open. Do we have any questions from anybody at all? I see there's a question from Caroline Maycock. Okay. Peter, happy to provide a brief vaccine update to the audience. That'll be fantastic, especially given all the information that's been in the news at the moment about vaccines. So yeah, Peter, if you're happy to provide an update, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I could do. Is there any possibility I can share a screen? Is that something I can do?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. It is set up for you to be able to do that.
Okay. So maybe if I do this, this might give some insight as to some things are going on. So can somebody just acknowledge that they can actually see a slide there which is named COVID-19 vaccine types?
Yeah, we can see that, Peter.
Okay, so Gregory Bleck is one of probably our most senior scientific advisors based over in the US, and Catalin on a global basis has been heavily investing in biologics and gene therapy over the past several years. And give you an indication of the scale, 3 years ago, biologics represented something like 4% of the annual revenues. This year, they're representing 44%, and that's all growth. So it's vast. And just to basically, in simplistic terms, try and explain a little bit about what vaccines are all about, that there's actually 4 variants which can be progressed. One of them, which is the fastest to be basically developed, is where you look at DNA and then you modify and you go through this stage of this sort of like this mRNA stage, to then eventually arrive at developing a protein, which if anybody's seen some of the technical stuff on the TV, they show this little coronavirus part, the actual virus itself, and then they show it like in bright red, this little protein spike. Well, the logic here is you actually just create the protein spike and then use that to start to promote the natural immune system. So the immune system is basically primed and functioning before until before the patient ultimately becomes exposed to COVID-19 as it is. So, the body is prepared, and that's the reason why it's effective. Likewise, the mRNA vaccine is just a shorter cut of that, in terms of it's not based purely on the DNA, but it's just on knowledge which is gained around the format of the spike protein. And again, you're trying to replicate something very, very similar. Adenovirus is where you get the cold virus and then you actually try and modify it. And this is true gene therapy. And gene therapy is where you can actually you can create personalized medication. And this is really, the grounds which are being covered most rapidly is in oncology in terms of cancer treatments, where you actually can extract something from a cancer patient, modify it, and then reintroduce it back into that one and same patient as a personalized medication to have targeted activity. Well, this is a little bit more broad brush in terms of you're looking at the cold virus, and then you're trying to modify that again in terms of the spike protein and to create a vaccine. And then the most traditional one is to actually create a portion of the vaccine, which is going to be harmless, but again just triggers the immune system to be able to cope and to try to prepare the body in terms of being prepared for that exposure, which is potentially going to be harmful. I mean, a long story on this one is that there's a lot of basic stuff which people can do to just prepare themselves, and things like the traditional flu vaccine. If you haven't lined yourself up to get yourself a jab, do it, because it's like exercising a muscle. You're exercising your immune system, so it's actually cycling and it's ready to fight off infection. So if you're actually up and running, it's like having a warm-up to an exercise, and that's really what the traditional flu vaccine can do. And likewise, in these horrible dark months between October and March, you don't synthesize Vit D because the sun's too low, doesn't go through the ozone layer. So topping yourself up on vitamin D, vitamin C, anything with zinc in it promotes the immune system, and getting your flu jab are all really good precautionary basic measures which you can do. Just to give you a little indication as to what else, what Catalan's all about, we're actually working on 60 programs across our 40+ site network right now. And we have 6 of the lead vaccine candidates in-house, which we're working on with partners. The AstraZeneca Oxford University one is this adenovirus-based vaccine. Likewise, the Janssen Pharma one, which you've heard of possibly at J&J. These products are going to be manufactured at our Anagni site in Italy. It's around about 100 kilometers away from Rome. and they're rapidly gearing up to produce vial filling of a scale to supply the entire of Europe. The mRNA-based vaccines with Arcturus and also Moderna are really exciting and are rapidly advanced, and those are based over in some of our sites in the US, predominantly Bloomington and some of the biotech sites over there. In addition to all of these vaccine activities, we've also got activities taking place which are related to immunosystem suppressants, because one of the things which is becoming evident in terms of the COVID virus is that mortality is generally as a cause of respiratory issues, and it's not dissimilar. So if you've got a skin injury, let's say you get a rose thorn or whatever pricking your skin, surprise, surprise, you get a swelling and some redness. Okay, and that's where the body's starting to react and trying to fight off the infection. That's what's happening in the lungs with this spike protein with the virus. So if you can actually suppress in a targeted way the activity in the lung from the immune system, you can actually get it that your lungs don't swell up, which then creates this horrendous respiratory issue, which is fundamentally leading to the majority of the mortality. So there's a lot of work being done in terms of those immunosuppressants as well, in addition to just sort of basic things in terms of fighting sort of typical sort of antiviral medications. So, you know, I think long story short, huge amount of activity taking place. Super confident that we're going to have mass solutions flooding into the world market, probably in the beginning of Q1 calendar year 21, if not before Christmas. Yeah, that's what's taking place in the world of pharma at the moment.
That's great, Peter. I really appreciate that, Dave. Thanks very much for doing that on the spot without any notification. You're going to be doing a presentation this morning, so thanks ever so much. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And delighted to say that Geraint is now with us from the Royal Agricultural University. So without further ado, if you're ready, Geraint, over to you for your update on the Royal Agricultural University.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I do apologise for being late. It's a sign of how global education is becoming that I was late because I was stuck in a teaching session in China, teaching in the city of Tianjin on a course that I run out there in urban development. So a very interesting world to live in, where you can be on one side of the planet but contributing to something on the other side. So let's go, without further ado, I'll update you briefly on where we are with our centre. And so I'll do a quick share, if I may, and then put that up for people to see it. So, okay, a quick update on where we are with the Cultural Heritage Institute in Swindon. Like most places, we've been coping with COVID and the problems that have surrounded COVID, and we've obviously had students back in the university, and very fortunately, or I should say, very well prepared, we've actually managed to keep the number of infections well down, and our arrangements within the university have been very good. I think over the entire semester we've had about 25 infections in total, all of which have resulted in us locking down particular groups of residents. So we have been able to cope quite well with infection within the university. So that's a really positive story, that actually when you do apply these measures reasonably strictly, you can achieve the results that are required. But the news from the vaccine is just wonderful, and we're all very excited by that. And to hear about the level of those preparations, I just caught the tail end of that. It's a staggering operation to do that. It puts everything we're doing into the shade, but very impressive. Anyway, so where are we? Cultural Heritage Institute exists largely to support the institutions that provide our cultural heritage resources in England. They're mostly based in Swindon. We have Historic England, English Heritage, and the National Trust for England and Wales are all based or have major office setups in Swindon. We also have the National Monuments Archive and Library, which is an integral part of the Historic England setup. And we also have, of course, in Swindon, Swindon's own museum service, but immediately outside Swindon, we have the Science Museum National Collections building at the old Wroughton Airfield, and that building is coming on apace and offers the most stupendous facilities, and that's become the National Collections Centre. So we have all these national heritage activities all in and around Swindon. So if you want the heritage hub for England, it is Swindon that we're at. So we're there in the heart of that, and our intention is to work with all of those bodies to provide high quality education and training that is linked directly to employment and is linked directly to employability. So we're pushing at something that should be really obvious, but actually is proved to be, certainly within the cultural heritage field, to be less than evident. So here we are. We're Shed 11 down here. That's the guy there. That's our space. It's part of the Carriage Works complex, and the building's been renovated by Swindon Borough Council, to which we're enormously grateful. They've invested heavily in this project, and we're very grateful to them. And my hope is now that we will be in the building and operating from the end of January, beginning of February. That's the start of our semester 2 in our university calendar. So we will be in there in semester 2, and we will have students in there. We've recruited about 15 students to our first courses. Doesn't sound like a huge number, but our expectations for those courses was only that we would only get this year probably about 5 or 6 on each program, so no more than 10. So to get 15 is good news, and we have a lot of people queuing up to come next year. So we're starting, in a good fashion. We're good out of the gate, as it were. So progress. The building was completed in September 2020. All thanks to the incredibly hard work of people like Mirabelle from Swindon Borough Council and the many council officers who worked very hard to make that happen, and our contractors who actually worked incredibly hard as well. So we're very grateful to them for pulling the stops out. We were due to go into the building in September, but COVID prevented that. It was decided that our COVID prevention practices would be better served if we taught everybody on the Cirencester campus, where we'd have a little bit more control over who they interact with. So it's currently in the process of being fitted out with IT equipment, and we've launched 2 degree programs. They're actually up and running, and we have 3 other programs in the pipeline to be launched next year. So we've got lots of programs at lots of different levels doing exactly what we set out to do. And one of the most important things that we've engaged is we're working with Wessex Archaeology. Wessex Archaeology may have heard about the Stonehenge tunnel. I'm not going to get into the pros and cons of that particular tunnel at this time. It is a controversial issue within heritage and archaeology, but nonetheless, the project itself requires a lot of training to be carried out, and there are opportunities for people to enter the archaeological profession without going through a degree, which is an interesting challenge, and we're providing all of that training. We are the preferred training provider on that project. So that's going to bring in a sizable block of income to build the centre over the next 8 to 9 years. So some really positive news stories and some really good progress. You've seen these plans before. It's all very well talking about a plan, but let's look at some reality. This is our entrance at the moment. We've got the planters there with no plants in. That'll be rectified soon enough. But you'll see we're the renovated part of the building. There's still a lot to do, and we're hoping that we'll have some very interesting neighbours over the next couple of years. So it's a really exciting time to be in this building and making change. Entrance to the building, very straightforward. We've got a renovated building of 1874. We've used a very industrial ethic right the way through the building, and the building actually uses the maxim that everything we do is reversible. We could remove everything and turn it back into a railway workshop if we wanted to. I don't think we're going to do that, but the theory is there. So again, we've used the best adaptive strategies for heritage buildings, which means that we're able to say to our students, look, this is how you can do it. We're living in this fantastic building. And again, thanks to Swindon Borough Council for their support in making it happen. So looking down the west corridor, you've basically got 2 levels. You've got a ground floor, as you can see, and then upstairs there is a mezzanine floor which contains 2 studio working areas. It's not a huge area, it's about 5,500 square feet, but it does give us the touch base that we need, because our teaching style is all going to be about people coming in, spending a reasonably small amount of time in the classroom, but most of our teaching is actually done through doing, going out and joining projects and getting involved in learning on the job. It's a very kinesthetic approach to learning, and that's central to what we do. But some nice facilities. This is a building that still needs to be finished and kitted out. It's finished structurally, it just needs to have some kit in it. It's what's called a dry laboratory. That's to say we can do all sorts of clever bits of analysis that don't involve wet chemistry. There's no fume cupboard, as you can see, but it's designed to allow us to do a lot of the everyday types of analysis and preparation that are common in archaeology and heritage, and do some conservation work as well. We can do a bit of conservation work on documents. We have a very nice lecture space, and you'll notice how open this is. This is part of a paradigm of learning called open learning. And I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's very much designed to allow people to earwig in, to listen to things that are not quite theirs, to learn serendipitously, rather than being in enclosed spaces with access to that information being shut off. So it's an interesting strategy which we're trying out. So we've got a very nice lecture theatre. There's about 40 seats. The area at the front here is designed to take wheelchairs, but also we have a full wheelchair lift going up to the mezzanine, and you can put wheelchairs along the back. So the person in the wheelchair doesn't have to be the person who sits at the front of the room all the time. They can, if they like, go and be with the bad boys and girls at the back of the room if they feel like it. So again, it's about making it adaptable and flexible. 40 seats in the main theatre. With the portable seating and additional seating at the front and the back, we can accommodate about 60 people in that lecture theatre, which is about as big as we'll ever need for this facility. So well designed facility, and again, a lot of credit to our architects who've worked very closely with us. Metropolitan Workshop in London. Seminar room at the end, nice little space. We're waiting on shelves to arrive. There'll be some books in there, because nothing says academic better than a pile of books behind you, as you can see. So we're putting in a little bit of a sort of library seminar room here. We've got a lot of partners we work with, and they've donated us a lot of materials. So again, it's all emphasis on the practical and the doing, and emphasis on reports that will be relevant to these students and will provide models for their professional development. We've got a lot of this circulation space, and it's not going to be wasted. You'll see that there are plug sockets along here, and this is where we'll have little seating units, or carrels as they're called, 2 people sitting opposite each other with a screen in between. So you'll be able to do your private work and your quiet work in your own little space. And one of the things we've noticed is our students all have headphones, and you know, if they want peace and quiet, they can always set them to white noise, or they can you know, set them to some music that they find soothing. So again, people generating a bubble of quiet in their own way around the building. Back corridor, I'm standing in what is a kitchen area, looking back down to where we were before, and you can see the back end of the laboratory space. And there are 3 little cubby holes here, and there is also a nice corridor to my right hand side as we look. There's disabled toilets, 4 unisex toilets, the access to our lift all down that service corridor, and that takes you back to the entrance, so you've got completely circular circulation. These little cubby holes are micro offices, and they're designed to be quiet spaces. They're soundproof, so we can use them as recording booths. So I can record podcasts, or I could record video presentations from these sites. They're also designed to be used as private meeting spaces. So if you have a one-to-one with your student and you want to discuss something personal, you're not going to have people able to hear what you're talking about. But of course, they are completely transparent on that wall, which means that there are no issues about you know, inappropriate behavior or similar, which I'm afraid is a factor in designing educational space at the moment. So these are very interesting little spaces. These will be hot desk offices, mostly used by academic staff. Upstairs, we have these mezzanine studio learning spaces, 2 of them, a big one, which I'm standing in, and a smaller one at the far end. These can each accommodate about 20 to 30 people sitting around different tables, and they're all very heavily hardwired, so we can actually put in a lot of computer equipment. And this is very, very flexible space. The idea is that it can be used as an exhibition space. We can put, display boards up and use it for that. We can use it for, sitting in rows to have a discussion. We can use it with discussion groups around tables. But it's mostly going to be used as a studio so that people will be able to do project work based in this environment. And again, archaeology and heritage is becoming a much more multidisciplinary subject, and we're moving in the direction of working with architects, landscape designers, and so on, all the way through a project. So this idea of a studio-based learning, very similar to what architects do, is something which we want to encourage because it's the direction of travel for the subject. So again, the space is there. And here you can see a couple of people hanging around. Fire exit, lift, and the server room, which is just out of sight on the right hand side. So again, we've got this very much a hardwired space, and all of the heating and cooling systems are designed to keep the building cool or hot using a series of heat exchangers. So basically, we're not wasting any energy. This is a very energy efficient building, which we're very, very proud of. So what are we going to be offering? Well, we're going to have a lot of courses. We've got an apprenticeship in archaeology at level 3. That's the equivalent of an A level, effectively. We've got apprenticeships in heritage management at level 7. That's the equivalent of a master's degree. We have in preparation an undergraduate degree in archaeology and applied heritage. That's going to be jointly offered as an industrial placement. A friend of mine said, it's like a sandwich degree, only what you've done is you've taken the filling and put it either side of the slice of bread. So we're very much biased towards the working environment. And that is a really important part of what we're trying to achieve by being this sort of slightly distant institute. We're part of RAU, but we have this sort of semi-independent role. We're already offering these 3 degrees: historic environment management, conservation and management of historic buildings, and archaeological and heritage practice. And these are very much based around the future direction of travel in archaeology and applied heritage. So historic environment management, for example, a lot of that is actually built around the management of our historic environment, working with communities, working with regeneration projects and so on. So it takes you away from the idea that we're just making lists of pots or lists of flints. We're actually being much more dynamic and interactive and helping to shape the future of our communities. We have an MBA in cultural heritage leadership. This has been on our books. We haven't had any takers yet. We've had lots and lots of interest, but with COVID, most of the people who would have come on that course have had to withdraw because of the pressures that their own companies or their own organizations are facing, trying to overcome the legacy of COVID. So we're hoping that will take off very shortly. As I said, lots of interest, but at the moment, no takers on that. We offer masters by research and doctoral research, and we do have doctoral students already in play. And we also have a whole range of CPD programs across the breadth of our offer. And we also do a lot of bespoke CPD. We do one for the church in Wales, for example, where people take certain of the modules from our master's degree and build up a specific certificate in the management of ecclesiastical buildings. So we've got a very flexible repertoire of courses that we can plug together like Lego to produce what people want. And we're happy to work with any employer to give them the course that they might need. We have an undergraduate summer school and we have a graduate summer school as well. And both of those will be running for the first time, probably in 2022. We probably missed the boat now with COVID for 2021. Obviously, you can't run a summer school without bringing people together. So that's an issue. We have done a lot of online work as well. And we are doing various online seminars. And they are great fun and they're fantastic and they're really, really useful. But they're always difficult to monetize. So again, we're doing a lot of work, more or less, to publicize the courses we're doing. All of our teaching is blended, so we don't expect people to turn up every day, and we have blocks of teaching, so people will come for a day or half a day rather than coming a bit here and a drib there and a half an hour here. It's all structured around combining your education with a job or with an employment opportunity. So very keen on that. We've got other academic offer in Swindon, which is coming down the pipeline. And just to give you an idea, we've been working with the business school in Cirencester on a foundation degree, which will be run out of Swindon, and a BA in business and business management, which again will be offered partly in Swindon, but with opportunities to go and spend time in various businesses outside. We've got a number of MBA variants, which again are being developed specifically to link with other companies and organisations in Swindon. Our School of Agriculture, Forestry and the Environment, SAFE, is also planning to run courses in this urban environment. One of the things that's going to happen post-Brexit is we're going to be losing an awful lot of our rural workers, which have formerly come from Europe. And one of the consequences, therefore, is going to be that we need to persuade people who live in urban environments to actually take jobs in a rural environment. We need to reverse this 2-century-long trend of everybody leaving the country to go to the city. So we've got a sort of urban to rural conversion program, and that's again engaging with schools, engaging with colleges to see if we can move that forward. And we're also doing an urban green space and urban agriculture course, which is in development at the moment, and that's going to be offered with Capel Manor in London, who are already city-based. And the transformation of our inner cities into productive spaces and green spaces is going to be a big trend in urban design over the next 20, 30 years. And we want to play our role in doing that. And we feel we can contribute particularly to the agricultural side of that. Real estate and land management, or realm, there is a potential of a real estate degree, based again, a work-based degree, and a potential as well for a sustainable urban development course, which would actually run across all our departments. So it would have business, how does it stack up financially? It would have agriculture, how do we make cities greener? And it would have real estate, what impact does this have on our city structures and buildings? So that's one course we're looking at. And again, we're offering CPD programs and a number of graduate summer schools, and they will all be offered through Swindon. We're well behind the curve now because of COVID. We had hoped to have everything in place and running, but I reckon we'll be up and running with all of this really properly by the summer of 2021. So that's where we are. We're doing other things. We're open to offers if you want to run an exhibition or event once we're all inoculated and virus dealt with. We've got lots of people queuing up to use that space for a variety of different purposes. And we've also got the opportunity to work to use that space and the digital facilities we are installing to create online content, working with media companies and groups elsewhere in the carriage works. So we're very open to offers. We're a very flexible group, and we're very keen to do things which can benefit our organisation and other organisations in a mutually happy way. So thank you very much for talking to us. If anybody's interested, this is the wood block floor of what was the carriage works, which was lifted and beautifully restored by our contractors. And I just thought it was a lovely texture to end the meeting on. But thank you very much for your time. And if you've got any questions, be very happy to answer them. So I'll stop sharing.
That's great. Thanks very much for that update, Geraint. Much appreciated. Thanks so much for taking the time to come and share that with us, especially as you were teaching in China. At least you didn't have to journey back. That's one thing about living in a digital and virtual world.
It is a very strange experience to be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and teaching classes in China. And you coming to the end of their day, and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning for us. So it's a very confusing episode. Even saying to them good morning, you have to stop saying that. You have to start thinking of neutral terms. But it's great fun.
Absolutely,
they're a very interesting group of students. So it's the future of education. It's going to be much more specialised. There's going to be a lot of sort of micro providers doing very specialist things. But people will be able to access those micro providers because they'll be available worldwide. So I think that's going to be a way forward, which is why I think a specialist institute, as we're doing, has actually got an enormous amount of value. We're already talking to people in India, for example, about providing heritage courses, and the Chinese want me to provide another course next year on heritage management, sort of introduction to that for undergraduates. So this idea of, you know, being a worldwide provider, even though you're based in somewhere quite small, is not ridiculous. And I think it's a direction of travel that will be with us for at least the next 10, 20 years. Marvellous.
All right, that's great. Thanks ever so much, then, Geraint. Much appreciated.
Okay.
Well, it's now 11:03. There have been some questions which I think mostly have been answered by other people in the chat facility. So hopefully that's answered all of your questions and queries from this morning. There are a number of people that I'll now add to the mailing list for the Mindful Employer Network. So really, all it remains for me to say is that hopefully we'll see you all at our next business and economy meeting, which is the 9th of December, and hopefully see some of you as well at our MP and Leader of the Council meeting on the 4th of December. But as I said earlier, keep an eye out for in your email inbox for invitations to those events. And if there's any further information you want following this morning that you didn't get in the chat box, by all means, feel free to email me at dave.batrick@businesswest.co.uk. So thanks ever so much for everybody for spending the time to join us this morning, especially to our speakers who have given us an insight into what they do. And all it remains for me to say is have a fantastic rest of the week and a lovely weekend, and look forward to seeing you all at one of our future events. So thank you so much.
Thank you.